In this tutorial series, we will cover what is two-way data binding in Angularjs.
Hello friends, welcome to our channel WaveTutorials and you are watching Angularjs full tutorial session. And also I request you to, if you have still not subscribed to our channel, then please subscribe to it and don't forget to click on that notification bell icon. So let's start with today's session.
Two-way data binding is most popular and widely used binding mechanism, which is continuous synchronization of data from view to component and component to view. In our previous videos of event data binding, interpolation and property data binding, we checked that all these are one-way data binding, whether they are sending their data either from component to view or from view to component. But here in two-way data binding, the data travel from component to view and same way from view to component. It is mainly used in data entry forms where the user provides some values or change any control value in presentation layer, and the same value automatically update in the component. Two-way data binding using Model Directive, which is a combination of square brackets of property binding and parentheses of event binding in a single notation. You can see example here, like in input form variable, we are using model within a parenthesis and set of square brackets, and the data we can synchronize between from view to component and from component to view. So let's open Visual Studio Code and see few examples of two-way data binding. So in Visual Studio Code, I already set up the component using inline template so that we can get a clear picture of how data travel from presentation layer to component. So also let me adjust this window a little bit more. So to check the two-way data binding, first of all, let's create a input form control, and whenever we type in input form control, the same will reflect on the page at same time using two-way data binding. So let's create it. First of all, let's give him a name like name, and then input, then set property data binding here with its attribute value, and set a value to it like text name. And also we have to create it a variable with the same name, text name, and pass a default value to it like, let's pass it Angular, and also let's display it on the page using interpolation. Let's save it. Here you can see the value of this variable using property binding in this input variable and also using interpolation here. So right now it's using the one-way data binding where the data travel from component to view using property binding and interpolation. So let me make it a little bold as well. But our requirement is to send the data back from view to component using two-way data binding. For now, let me add one event binding here like input, and let's call a method here set value and pass current event of this input control like event. And now let's create a method here with the same name set value and receive that event in the form of either $ev event, or you can also get it by using is. Now let's set the value of this text name to this dot text value equal to e dot target dot value. So here I am setting the value of target input control to again this variable. So let's save it. So you can see that we are using both property binding and event binding to set and get the data. Here the property binding and interpolation is using one-way data binding which flow the data from component to view, And the event binding, which you already know, that travels the data from view to component, and both property binding and event binding used to set and get the data and showing the two-way data binding. But whereas it's right now still a one-way data binding. To make a two-way data binding, we have to convert the code little bit to achieve the exact two-way data binding with a single directive, which will work as a two-way data binding. We already discussed about ng model in our presentation slide. So let's change the code little bit, and instead of this property binding and event binding, we will use ng model. So first of all, let's create a set of square bracket as a syntax of property binding, and then set of parentheses as a syntax of event binding. So let's type ng model and set its value to this variable text name. We also do not require this method, and let's save it. You can see here an error that cannot bind ng model since it is not a non-property of input. This is because ng model is present in Angular forms module. So for this we have to import form module in our app module file. So let's open our app module file and import Angular forms. Forms module from the library Angular forms, and also we have to import this module in import statement here. Let's save it, and now we can set and get the value from this input control with this interpolation. So let's type tutorials. So you can see that the data travel in both sides, from component to view and from view to component. So this is the example of two-way data binding, and using the syntax curly braces in between the square bracket, which is a combination of event binding and property binding, we can achieve two-way data binding. So in this session we have covered what is two-way data binding in Angular and how we can achieve it using Visual Studio Code in AngularJS application. If you have any query, you can post a comment in a comment box, or you can also write to me at wavetutorials@outlook.com. I again request you to, if you have still not subscribed to our channel, then please subscribe to it and also like this video. My name is Naveen, and thank you for watching this tutorial.